All right. I don't know if you've noticed this, this kind of trend that people are doing at the moment on their kind of Facebook status updates or their tweets, and that is they will put hashtag winning. Have you seen that? Hashtag winning. And it's the sort of thing you put when you get like a 2-for-1 boost juice. Hashtag winning. Or maybe you put your jacket on and you find $20 in the pocket. Right? Hashtag winning. Or maybe you find $2 in the urinal. Hashtag winning. Okay, but you know what it means, don't you? You kind of get it. It means that you're winning at life, that you've won, that you're beating it, that you're coming out on top, that your life is a success. It's a success. But hashtag winning is a bit of a joke, isn't it? I mean, we put it on trivial things that don't really mean that much to us. Well, this afternoon with you, I would like to explore the topic of what is a successful life? What does it mean to win? How can you actually put hashtag winning for your life? For your whole life? And I guarantee you that every person in this room has an idea about what they want out of life. About what a life is that's successful, that's won. Every one of you will have a list of things that you want to do and achieve and have and places you want to go in your life. I mean, and that's true, isn't it? That's true. Things so that you can look back in your life and say, yes, it was a success. And so I wonder what those things are for you. Each one of those cards that you would have got when you came in has a different photo of someone considered to be successful for a different reason. And some of them you might go, yeah, that person's a real success. And others you might think, well, I'm not sure if I can relate to them at all. Well, that's our question. What is success? What does it mean to win? How can you have a successful life? And in the Bible story that we're going to read through today together, we're going to actually see Jesus' answer to that question. What is a successful life? And specifically, he's going to look at the issue of money, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, when you imagine in your head a successful person, they're probably on a beach somewhere, aren't they? With, a cocktail and something called katoot rubbing their feet. Or maybe they're in an executive office suite, looking over their empire, looking over the city from the top floor in one of those big power chairs, power suit. Maybe that's success. Wealth, money, luxury. I mean, if you've got money, you can have just about everything else, can't you? Is that a successful life? Well, this is not a new question. It's a question that people were asking back in Jesus' day. And if anyone has a Bible, you can have a look with me at these verses that we're going to look at. But I'm going to read them out anyway, so you just listen. But we're going to have a look at the book of Luke. It's a story about Jesus' life, where the things that Jesus said are recorded. And we're going to think together about one of the things that Jesus said. The kind of context is Jesus is a big deal at this point in the story. We're jumping right into the middle. He's got a huge following. And he's got a big crowd in front of him, and from that crowd, someone pipes up. I'm going to read verse 13 of chapter 12. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." You understand what's going on here? I'm sure you've seen families fight over money. There's a man and he says, "Jesus, I'm having this fight with my brother. Can you sort it out?" After all, if you're going to listen to anyone, you're going to listen to Jesus. Jesus, tell him to give me my money. Have a look what Jesus says. Or listen to what Jesus says, verses 14 and 15. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." He warns him. In fact, he warns everyone. He warns everyone that's listening not to be greedy, because life is more than just an abundance of possessions. You know what possession is? Anything you can get, anything you can gain, something that can become yours, that you can possess, that you can have. It's funny. We kind of know that money doesn't lead to happiness. Just because you get rich doesn't mean you're going to be happy. But don't we all want a truckload of it to find out for ourselves? Jesus warns them that life is more than just an abundance of possessions. But to explain what he means, he tells a story, or he tells a parable, which is just a story with a meaning. I'm going to read out verses 16 and 17. Listen to what Jesus said. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. This is a smart man. He's worked hard. If he was at Monash, he would have got straight HDs through economics and farming and whatever they studied in the first century here. His land is really productive. I guess that means he's got lots of fat cows and they have lots of babies and there's lots of grain and wheat and stuff. And in fact, he can't fill all his barns. He can't fill them all. That's how much stuff he's got. That's like money in the bank. So he knocks down the small barns, he builds medium-sized ones, and he's got to knock them down to build really big ones because he's so wealthy. He's got so much money. He is a success, isn't he? He's a success. Hashtag. It's not going to work. Hashtag winning. No, I've got a hashtag on the screen. You might want to bring that up at the back now. It seems like he is a success. Let's see what he does in verse 19. I'm going to read this out. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. In other words, he says to himself, I've arrived. I've hit the big time. I've worked hard, and now I'm going to enjoy everything that I've got. He's living the dream, isn't he? He says to himself, I'm going to eat, I'm going to drink, I'm going to party. It's time to enjoy life. It's time to relax and enjoy everything I've got. Isn't this what you want in life? Isn't this what you want out of your life? To make enough money to enjoy yourself. To have all the things that you want. To do all the things you want. All the experiences. To travel to all the places you want to go. Isn't this what you want for your life? Surely this is a successful life, hey? Get rich and then spend the rest of your time relaxing and enjoying it. Surely this is the lesson that Jesus wants to teach us. But have a look what Jesus says, or have a listen to what Jesus says in verse 20. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? You see that? God speaks to this man and he calls him a fool. Does God call people fools? It's not something we sort of think that God does. But he says, you are a fool because this very night your life will be demanded from you. That means tonight you're going to die. And then what's going to happen to all that stuff that you accumulated? Now what's going to happen to all that? Whose stuff is that going to be now? It's kind of an unsettling story Jesus tells, isn't it? You feel a little bit unsettled by it. I want you to just notice a few things about what Jesus says. First of all, God seems to be implying that he owns your life. Did you notice that? That's why he could demand it back. It's as if God's saying to this man, I gave you your life, now I'm taking it back. And I don't know, you might be a little bit offended by that idea that God doesn't own my life. It's my life. I can do what I want with it. He doesn't have any claim over it. But if it's your life, why can't you keep it? See, why you have to give it back one day? And you know you will, don't you? See, the problem is that money fails. And that's why this man is a fool. It fails for a whole number of reasons, but primarily, money fails because it doesn't last. It doesn't last forever. You can't take it with you. Money doesn't last because you don't last. And you can't take your money with you. You know those pharaohs that get buried with all their treasure for the afterlife? It's all still there. It's all still there waiting for Indiana Jones to come in and take it all. You know, we've got this saying, whoever dies with the most toys wins. Have you ever heard that one? Whoever dies with the most toys wins. I always want to know, what do you win? Do you win a better gravestone? A bigger coffin? See, what good is money when you're dead? What good is money when you're dead? That's the problem with stuff, is that you're going to die. I mean, it's the problem with life, isn't it? It's going to come to an end, and everything you have and everything that you've done, it's got an expiry date. You can't take it with you. It's all going to finish. A couple of months ago, someone asked me to give a presentation on the topic of death. It's not a kind of nice topic to speak about, to be honest. And I've been to a few funerals, but I didn't really know much about death, so I thought I'd better do some research. And so I went for a walk just through the local cemetery. Don't know if you've ever done that, just gone for a walk through a cemetery. There was no one else there, so I don't know if anyone's ever done it. But I did, and I thought you won't believe me. So, Matt, you want to put up a picture? I took a selfie. This is a cemetery selfie. It's going to be a thing. And as I was walking through the graves, just sort of reading the different tombstones, and each one would be in beloved memory of Peter, loving husband of Joan, mother of Sarah. Each tombstone was someone's life. And as I was walking through this cemetery, through the kind of aisles, I actually found myself getting a bit emotional. And I was trying to work out why is this having such an effect on me, just being here and looking at all these tombs. And I realised it was because each one of these graves represents a life. This is someone's life. Someone who was alive, who was loved, who had dreams and did things and had things. Each one of these tombs represented a real life. The other thing I realised was that I was looking at my future. And I'm looking at your future. So I don't know what you will do in your life. I don't know where you'll go. I don't know what you'll have. I don't know who you'll love. But I know one day you're coming here. And so am I. And we all know that, don't we? You can take that slide off, Matt. It's embarrassing. See, to spend your life acquiring stuff only to end up at a cemetery, God calls this man a fool. He says, you're a fool. See, he is a failure. How do you have a successful life? Well, Jesus is going to explain. Have a look what Jesus says in verse 21. I'll read it out for you. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. What was the man's mistake? He stored up all sorts of treasure for this world, but he was not rich towards God. What does that mean, being rich towards God? Well, I don't think it means giving God your money as if God's kind of a poor child that needs your charity. God's not poor. No, it means to acknowledge him. See, that's what the man didn't do. He didn't acknowledge God. He didn't think about him. He lived his life as if God wasn't there. He didn't recognise that God was the one who made his land. That God was the one who made it productive. That God was the one who gave him his life. No, he didn't listen to God. He didn't thank him. He didn't recognise him. And in the end, despite all his success, he ends up with nothing. He's a failure. And God says he's a fool. God says, you fool. I wonder, could this be a story of your life? Could this be your story? To live a life enjoying all the things that God gives you, but to completely ignore him. See, this man stored up treasure for this life, but this life doesn't last. See, no one's going to put hashtag winning on their tombstone, are they? People come along and say, no, you're not, bro, you're dead. But you see, that is exactly what they said about Jesus' tomb. And he came back from the dead. See, if there was a life beyond this one, it would change everything, wouldn't it? If there was a life beyond the grave, it would change everything. And that's exactly the life that Jesus has come to offer. Let me show you one of the things that Jesus says. Now, this will come up on the screen. From the one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die ever. I mean, that is a big claim. That is a huge claim. You know, young guys love boasting to each other. Have you noticed that? Oh, I did this, and then your mates say, no, you didn't. You say, yes, I did. But I've never heard anyone claim something like this. Something like this. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, he will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die ever. I want you to realise, if there was even a chance that Jesus is telling the truth here, if Jesus could actually deliver on this promise, it'd be the greatest thing of all time, wouldn't it? And that'd be the best thing ever for everyone. And if there was even a chance that Jesus is telling the truth here, that he could deliver on this promise, it'd be worth you knowing. It'd be worth you investigating. I want you to win at life. I want you to write #winning at the end of it. But if you're not rich towards God, you never will. If you want to acknowledge God, then a great place to start is by listening to his son Jesus and what he's got to say. And now someone's going to get up and explain to us how we might be able to investigate that.
If something that's been said today has made you curious, we really invite you to investigate those questions. And a great way to do that here is to come along to a course that we run called Introducing God. That's starting in week 4, and it's a great place to learn things and to meet a bunch of great people who are really keen to chat with you and to address the questions that you have. Last week we heard from Simon Angus, who's a senior economics lecturer here at Monash, about how he was persuaded to listen to Jesus and to listen to what the Son of God had to say. So now we're going to hear a little bit more from him about how he acknowledges Christ in his workplace and how he deals with the big questions and conflicts that come from that as an academic.
We do get some important questions that are answered in the creation account, and I was told to them who created it, why was the creation there, something about the order of creation and so on. But beyond that, we can't really know much, and so I'm quite comfortable for scientists to investigate that and think about that. But where there are questions that are grey or difficult, my prior commitment is to God, and if there seems a conflict at the time, I guess I accept that perhaps we just don't know yet. And if you've been around science for long enough, you also know that theories change, we learn more. What seemed to be a certain way of knowing about the world becomes uncertain or replaced in time. Christian worldview butts up against materialism, atheism, and other religions. I have had that happen several times, often with the same people, and we need to find a way to speak to each other, try and wrestle with each other about our convictions. My conversations often are to try and point to that foundation, to the very basis of why we can know anything at all in the universe. My colleagues who are atheists and sometimes strongly hold these views prefer to talk more about downstream issues, I guess, where Christianity seems to be at odds perhaps with the material universe and so on. I don't feel less academically for being Christian. As I said, I feel more comfortable perhaps that I do have a worldview that makes sense of my science. Occasionally I need to be careful because Christianity, and I think this kind of investigation and inquiry, causes me to perhaps have answers to some questions that my colleagues don't, or I've thought through them. Some of my colleagues, just because they've never really been caused to, haven't really thought about it. Once a year are probably two most foremost. One would be a materialist perspective or a heavily empirical perspective. So I can't know anything unless I've measured it, seen, touched it, smelt it. It's got a physical presence, which that worldview puts out at the very beginning any concept of the spiritual, the metaphysical. God doesn't exist in that place. It's not because he doesn't exist, he can't exist. That framework doesn't allow for the existence of a God because God is other, non-material, supernatural and so on. That, therefore, you can see I try to move the discussion about our foundations and why we get that. That's a question really about how we know anything, how we validate knowledge. It's epistemological, and there are others who perhaps have a very hyper-rational view of the world, so I only know things that are completely logically consistent and coherent. These are issues that, sometimes people with a small knowledge of the Bible like to bring things that seem apparently inconsistent about God of the Old Testament, God of the New Testament. How can these be the same? How can someone who promises good for the world still have a world that has evil in it? And so on. These can kind of come out of that. The other big issue is around evolution and origins. So as I touched on before, some of my colleagues hold strongly to an evolutionary, an atheist evolutionary perspective. And for them, that implies, the next step of that is they often think that evolutionary biology, if that's the method of creation for our world, or at least the complexity on Earth, that necessarily implies a godless universe. My conversations there are to try and show that, well, at the very first point, there's scientists who are excellent in their field of biology who are actually also Christian, so it seems not inconsistent with them. And then there's also the question around, whether we can really conclude soundly on the question of methods anyway. There are people within Christianity who take a certain view of origins in the Bible and consider a short days of creation that God spoke and things came into being exactly, perhaps following a pattern in Genesis. There are other Christians who, probably like me, find methods difficult to nail down. It could be that, it could be evolutionary biology, it could be something else. And at the moment, I guess I would say I'm happy to go along with an evolutionary perspective because I don't think it is, in its general form, inconsistent with what we see in origins in the Bible. But there are certain things from the Bible that I have to hold up and be true, and sometimes that does butt up. For me, these conversations normally are about trying to understand where the person's coming from, and what I really like to be talking about is often not evolutionary biology or origins or whatever, although I'm happy to talk about it, but actually bring the conversation back to something that I think is really important to Christianity, which is the man Jesus. All of us really have made a decision about Jesus, and I guess based on his world where I've come from to becoming a Christian, again would like to talk about that central moment in history, the death and resurrection of Jesus, because I think if we understand that and have a response to that, then our response to everything else, these other issues downstream or whatever we call them, flows out from that point.
I told you it was good. So, in the line of what Tim and Angus have just talked about, I encourage you to keep talking about what a successful life looks like. So, have coffee with the person that bought you, have a chat to Tim, check out the websites, they're on the back of your handout, they are correct, even if the rest of it wasn't. And come back next week, of course, we'd love to see you again. So that's all for now. Feel free to hang out outside the front of the religious centre, there'll be tea and coffee and stuff. And yeah, thanks for coming.